What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are picking back up with the Immortal Hulk. Now, one thing to know, we are only a handful of issues out until this thing ends, right? I think we have, what is this? This is technically July, so I think we have August, September, and October. So we got 3 issues left until this whole thing is finished, and it's all wrapped up and done. So I'm really excited to see where this ends, because let me know down in the comments. I'm curious what your all's take is on the Immortal Hulk run up to this point. But in this video, we're covering what is basically the secret origin of Joe Fixit Hulk. Now, one of the things to keep in mind when it comes to Joe Fixit is that what you had originally in Marvel Comics, as most of you guys know, is you had the Incredible Hulk who was gray. And a lot of that was because they just didn't want him to tie into any kind of racial ethnicity or anything like that. But the difficulties that came with making the Incredible Hulk gray in color basically couldn't be overcome. So they ended up making him green. Now, years later, under Peter David's run with the Incredible Hulk 347, they brought the gray Hulk back, but called him Joe Fixit. And the in-continuity explanation is that technically the very first variation of the Incredible Hulk we saw was actually Joe Fixit Hulk, hence the reason why he was gray. But the Joe Fixit persona took a back seat to the Savage Hulk persona, which is why he turned to green. And so it was a pretty neat way to kind of wrap those things up. But the reality is we never really seem to get a tried and true explanation of Joe Fixit. And so a lot of this really seems to cope with that. Now, one of the things this does here is it kind of does a bit of a flashback with regards to Betty Ross and all that kind of stuff, the bit of the history there between her and Bruce. And anybody who's been reading the Incredible Hulk for any measure of time will tell you their relationship is tumultuous at best. Right? They have been lovers and they have been head over heels for each other. And there's been times where they've been at each other's throats, right? They just absolutely want to kill each other. Really good example of that was Red She-Hulk versus the Incredible Hulk, right? But the whole thing behind this is that a lot of what happened with Betty Ross, the struggle she went through, a lot of even the death of her character was all based on her experiences with the Incredible Hulk. If Bruce Banner had not become the Hulk, she wouldn't have endured all those different things. And a lot of this is designed to kind of juxtapose things, right? The idea that in the early days when she was talking to her dad, oh, don't be unfair to Bruce Banner, he's a cool guy, everything's gonna be fine, no matter what happens, I'm sure he knows what he's doing, all the while kind of giving us this these kind of panels that show us that yes, they got married and then their life basically went to crap and she ended up dying, then came back as Red She-Hulk, and then all this kind of crazy stuff, right? He basically turned her life upside down. And all this really kind of segues into what is one of the most weird moments of probably any Incredible Hulk series ever, when you've basically got Red Harpy, right, Betty Ross, in bed with Joe Fixit Hulk, imbued with the power of the Red Hulk. It's weird. It's a little strange, but it's kind of cool, right? Because there's a little bit of banter that kind of goes back and forth between the two. But one of the other funny things that really goes on here is that when Betty turns back into herself, there's a big conversation about the nature of Bruce Banner, about how she sees Bruce, how she's seen him for quite some time, and how she sees Joe Fixit. And the way this works is that Bruce has, in a lot of ways, kind of pushed Betty away. That it's one of these things where he's come to her for aid, but he's also pushed her away. And a lot of it's subject to whatever it is that he happens to be going through at the time. And it really all kind of boiled down to this mentality of Bruce doesn't want Betty exposed to the life that he lives in, but he doesn't want to live without her. And so how do you square that circle, right? How do you keep somebody safe from this life that you live, but at the same time, keep them close by you? And in a lot of ways you can't. And that's one of the reasons why you saw a lot of these instances over the course of the Incredible Hulk mythos, right? Bill Mantlo, Peter David, Greg Pak, Jason Aaron, all these guys, where it was basically Bruce Banner in a lot of ways pushing Betty Ross away, but at the same time also trying to keep her close, right? This kind of tug of war that went on. And for her, it was exceedingly frustrating and exceedingly irritating. More so than that, she hasn't seen Bruce Banner for quite some time, that he hasn't appeared to her and had any real kind of conversation with her. Now, a lot of what's gone on recently, if you guys have been following our coverage of the Immortal Hulk, is that Bruce Banner's in hell. So he can't. He can't hang out with her. He can't spend time with her. But even when that wasn't the case, he just didn't really like her. And the reason why was because she was a mirror for Bruce. When you look at it, if we kind of go the route of like Bill Mantlo and Peter David and look at it as a more introspective philosophical approach to the reason why Bruce was this way, it's because when Betty Ross was just Betty Ross, she was a normal human. She represented everything that made Bruce Banner's life pure and great and perfect. This idea that he could return to a state of normalcy in this chaotic life that he led. But when the time came when Betty Ross died, suddenly Bruce Banner lost everything that was pure and great in his life. When she returned as the Red She-Hulk, any chance he had had of normalcy was stripped away, when she didn't want to have anything to do with him and seemed to outright hate him. And then when she ended up becoming the Red Harpy, or at least returning back to the Red Harpy and taking on this kind of, Red She-Hulk, Red Harpy approach, then suddenly she was a mirror of all the things that Bruce Banner hated about himself, i.e. gamma radiation and the Hulk. And so then he was basically avoiding her. And so it was one of these things where consistently any possibility he had with a great life with Betty, returning to that kind of pure time when everything was perfect, was gone. And Betty Ross, looking at Joe Fixit, came to this realization that where Bruce Banner shied away from that, Joe Fixit embraced it. And so in her mind, Joe Fixit basically saw her for who she really was and accepted it. That in reality, with everything that she had gone through, as Betty Ross interprets it, this Harpy form is who she really is, right? That's who she really is as a person on the inside, that's physically manifested. And Joe Fixit embraced that. And so in a lot of ways, that kind of acceptance led to what she believed to be the process of falling in love. The problem with this is that Joe Fixit reveals his true colors here. We all know that Joe Fixit was not a very good guy, and that while he does talk a big game, in a lot of ways, he was kind of a coward. And that's what he reveals to her, that in this moment when he was whisked away to hell, and then everything was popping off, all Joe Fixit cared about was trying to find a way out, right? Getting himself out of there. All the while, he knew Bruce Banner was there, but made absolutely no effort to get Bruce Banner out of hell. And he tells her that. He's like, look, I mean, the reason why Bruce hasn't been talking to you is because he's in hell. And yes, I was there, and I could have saved him, but at the end of the day, I just wanted to find a way out. And she freaks. She's like, you left Bruce in hell? And immediately starts going off on him, right? Immediately starts losing it and attacking him. Now, you do kind of switch over for a second between Jennifer Walters and Jackie McGee. Of course, as you guys recall in the last video that we did, Jennifer Walters essentially defected from the Avengers and joined the Immortal Hulk's team, which was really kind of Al Ewing essentially consolidating all the members of the gamma radiated community into one place. But what she of course does is take the phone of Jackie McGee, and then she basically hops on the old Fantastic Four line. Now, the reason why this happens, and this is a great reference by Al Ewing, I love that he did this. Jennifer Walters was a member of the Fantastic Four at one point in Marvel Comics. A lot of you guys may not know that, but there was a point when different characters shifted around. And so you had characters that would stand in for these guys. Jennifer Walters was one of them. And so because of the fact that that was the case, she has access to the kind of Fantastic Four back channels, right? Their communication lines. And she basically sends off an encrypted message to Ben Grimm, which says like, the Incredible Hulk's cool, everything's okay, I'm safe, I got everything under control. The question he asks to what is in effect an entire assembly of all the biggest heavy hitters in the Marvel universe, right? So all the members of the Fantastic Four and all the members of the Avengers is, are we going to do the same thing? Are we going to tell her that we're all basically mustering our forces to launch an attack on the Immortal Hulk and the entirety of the Hulk family? Or do we keep that to ourselves, right? Now, we don't really get an answer to that. Instead, what we get is basically the aftermath of Joe Fixit Hulk revealing to Jennifer Walters that he left Bruce Banner in hell. And essentially, she lets him have it, right? That she's kind of like, so I've been operating under this false pretense this whole time. This whole time, I thought you were a guy who saw me for who I really was and all that kind of stuff. Instead, it turns out you're just a coward and a dick. Like, really? And just like lays into this guy. And where he apologizes, her response is, no, you don't know how to be sorry, right? You want to look sorry, but that's just a camouflage to hide the real you, that you only care about yourself. And at that point, she writes him off. And in the end, he tries to make up for this by kind of offering an explanation and saying, look, there's something that you need to understand about who I am, right? There's something that you need to understand about who I am as a person and where I came from, right? That I am simply just a version of the Incredible Hulk that you ran across one day, just one of Bruce Banner's alters, right? His alternate personalities. But there's another thing that you need to know here. There was a kid, like when Bruce Banner was a little kid, he was, beaten by his father, his mother was beaten by his father, but his life was absolute turmoil and absolute hell. And that while his father was sleeping it off one night, while his mom wasn't there, he watched a black and white movie through both of his black eyes that had just been made that way by his father. And somewhere in there was an idea of what a grown-up is, somebody who could take the pain. And he says, that's where I started from. Now, this is not a lengthy secret origin here, but it's tragic as hell. Because one of the things to know, especially when it came to the Incredible Hulk mythos, for a lot of you guys who were new to the Incredible Hulk, new to this channel, don't really know about a lot of this stuff, the old stories with Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were straightforward Incredible Hulk stories, right? Hulk just smashing things, he fights some people, the story ends, and then you do it again in the next issue. When it got to Bill Mantlo and Peter David, especially really it started with Bill Mantlo and continued through Peter David, it was very much an introspective philosophical run on what makes the Incredible Hulk the Incredible Hulk. How did Banner become the person that he was? Did the Incredible Hulk just manifest randomly because of gamma radiation? Or is there something deeper than that? And one of the things that they really built on there is that everything the Incredible Hulk represents is essentially the rage that Bruce Banner feels towards his father, Brian Banner. And that being left alone is one part, whenever the Incredible Hulk says that, it's one part telling the people who were there, leave me alone. And two, crying out to when he was a little kid, begging his father to leave him alone. The run of Bill Mantlo and Peter David, you talk to anybody who knows anything about the Incredible Hulk and they'll tell you it's one of the most significant runs in the history of the character, because everything that you've seen with the Incredible Hulk following those runs is built on those runs, right? Every concept that you've seen is predicated on that, right? Just because of the work that was done and the things that went into it. And so Al Ewing doing this ties into that old stuff, where it basically really takes a page out of the stories of Bill Mantlo and Peter David. And it says that like the notion of Bruce Banner, sure, the Savage Hulk is a reflection of the rage that he feels towards his father, Joe Fixit. The reason why he's so hardcore, the reason why he's, the guy you don't mess around with, why he has this kind of intelligence, but at the same time is what you would define as kind of being a man's man, is because it's predicated on a movie. That Bruce Banner in his younger years developed this alternate personality because he wanted to be the kind of person that could withstand the pain that his father dished out to him. And that's why when things get really, 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 really bad, sometimes Joe Fixit will manifest. The personality that takes over needs to be the personality that can cast everything aside, emotional ties, the whole 9 yards, and do what needs to be done. And that's what Joe Fixit is, right? He is a kind of romanticized perception of what Bruce Banner thinks a man is based on the movies that he's seen. So it's a great concept, right? It's a really, really cool idea. But at the end of the day, in saying all that, he says like, it's not really me that I'm in love with anymore. I don't want to be that person anymore. And when she's like, so what does any of that mean? He says, I love you, right? He's like, that's what that means, is that I'm in love with you, right? Like I, Joe Fixit, am in love with you, Betty Ross, which I mean, like the whole motivation behind this, it's beautiful. Looking at it is weird. Joe Fixit Hulk, like Joe Fixit Hulk with the power of the Red Hulk, is saying this to a red Harpy. It's a little wonky, but if you can look past that and kind of look at it as two personalities saying this, then it makes sense. But at the end of the day, Betty Ross is like, I don't know what to do with this, right? I don't know how to respond to this. And so she does the only thing that she can do, the only thing that she really knows how to do, is that when he's spilling his heart and saying like, you make me want to be a better man. Like, I know it was dumb to leave Bruce there, but this time that I spend with you, this time that I'm around you, makes me realize all my shortcomings, all my mistakes, and it makes me want to be better. Betty Ross does what she always does. She runs, she flees, right? She basically ends up taking off. And so when Joe Fixit, kind of continues this conversation, not realizing that Betty Ross has taken off, and he's saying things like, now that I've come out during the day and I'm around people more, I've learned to understand people better, I've learned to grasp people better, so on and so forth, and I've kind of learned the error of my ways. Once he asks her what she thinks, she's gone, right? She's totally taken off. And so he's like, okay, well then I guess that kind of answers that question to a degree. And so ultimately he ends up kind of stepping out of the room, because this whole thing took place just in an apartment room, which is pretty cool. I love the idea when you have comic book stories where the whole story takes place in like a room, right? It just takes place in like a singular location, because it's a real testament to whether or not a writer can write characters in a way that people can find receptive, right? Can they really understand those characters if they can write them in what is in effect a static location without a whole bunch of action sequences and things to mask the poor handling of the characters? But nonetheless, Al Ewing, of course, as you guys know, writes Immortal Hulk just stupidly well. It's ridiculous how good it is. But when the question's asked, like, what's the plan? Like, what are we doing here, right? I mean, like, is there some goal that we have? Because right now we're just hiding out from the Avengers and the Fantastic Four. What are we doing? What's the next step? And the answer that Joe Fixit has is, I'm going to go to hell. I'm going to go to hell. I'm going to face the one below all, and I'm going to save Bruce Banner, whether I'm ready to do this or not. It's cool. This is obviously leading up to something massive. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.